We want to welcome everybody to our latest edition of Community Broadband Action Network's Lunch and Learn series of webinars. I'm Curtis Dean, one of the co-founders of CBAN, and Todd Kielkoff is on with us in just a minute. I'll introduce him and our guests for today, but first I wanted to do a little housekeeping for everyone. This is the challenge, today's topic, which is technology challenges for rural broadband. And like I said, in a minute, you'll meet our panelists, Chuck Pauk with Landus Cooperative and Ryan Malek, who is with Router12 Networks. If you are not a CBAN member, this is where the sales pitch comes in. We'd love to have you join. It's only a sales pitch if you're an associate member, because everybody else gets in free. And we really think that that's a great way to build an organization. So community members, provider membership, advocate membership, all free. If you are a company that sells products or services in the broadband space, associate membership also available. There is a dues for that, depending on the size of your company. So we'd sure love to have you join. I'd like to welcome right now some very newly minted CBAN members. A shout out to Reedsburg Utility Commission in Reedsburg, Wisconsin. They are a new provider member. Also, Grand Mound Cooperative Telephone in Eastern Iowa is a new provider member of CBAN. I think I saw Travis on here, so Travis, welcome. Miles Communications, also in Eastern Iowa, is a new provider member. We have an advocate member in the city of Newport News, Virginia, as the city there is looking to tackle some broadband deficiencies. And finally, Clinton County, Iowa, joined as a community member a couple of weeks ago, probably since our last gathering here. So I wanted to recognize those folks and thank them for being a part of our little community here. So again, Curtis Dean with Community Broadband Action Network. There's Todd Kielkoff over there. Say hi, Todd.
Hello.
Todd is with Kielkoff Advisory Services and one of our CBAN co-founders. And we're really excited to have this panel on today. We're going to be looking at challenges of the technology needed to deploy broadband in rural areas. And we're going to look at this from two different angles. We're going to look at it from the angle of a individual, or in this case, business that needs connectivity for their business to operate, or if it's just an individual to do anything else in the world. But we're also going to look at it from the provider perspective, from a provider that is serving rural areas and has had to innovate over the years and will continue to innovate to try to reach those communities. So first, I'd like to introduce Chuck Pauk, and Chuck is with Landus Cooperative. So Chuck, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name's Chuck Pauk. I'm the Director of Technical Services for Landus Cooperative. Landus is a merged cooperative that merged about 5 years ago. We were the former FC Cooperative and West Central Cooperative. So we have 60 locations covering everything from the Minnesota border up in the Rake-Thompson area, all the way over to Sioux City, down around the Des Moines area, and south to basically Council Bluffs at this point in time. So we cover a fairly big chunk of the state, and a lot of times we're in a smaller market such as Casey and Exira, where things become challenges.
Yeah. And you've had to deal with those challenges over the years, so we'll kind of tackle that in just a minute. Ryan Malek is with Router12 Networks. Ryan, I don't know what you call yourself title, but you are the founder and principal human being at Router12. Tell everybody about Router12.
Router12 is in its 8th year of operation now. We're covering about 3,000 square miles of North Iowa. We've branched into Minnesota a little bit. Ironically, that was driven by a cooperative up there that was having trouble getting connectivity. The bulk of our network is wireless technology. We've used that to grow quickly. We can get service to places very cost effectively, and even in more populated areas, we have quite a few urban areas that we're in pretty high demand, because even the wired services are not living up to what they should be. So we put a lot of time and effort into reaching people that are unreachable. And some of that is paid for by the people that are easy to reach. So it's
Mhm.
kind of a trade-off, but we've some of these solutions end up pretty creative.
Yeah.
So
No doubt. And you've continued to innovate and adapt new technology over the years too. So I want to really dig into that here in a little bit. I also want to let everybody know, if you're on as an attendee, thank you for joining. We appreciate your participation. If you have a question, there's a couple of different ways you can route a question to us. You can raise your hand, first of all. And if you raise your hand, I might even deactivate the mute so that you can actually talk. If you would rather do so a little more quietly, if you hit the Q&A button, you can type a question in there and we'll tackle those questions as they come up. And there's also the chat function. And so you can type in there and you can direct that at everybody or just one of the panelists. And that allows you to ask your question as well. So plenty of opportunities to participate here. I just want to let everybody know, those of you, several of you have been on other broadband bites, or I should say lunch and learns over the years. We are going to be converting the Zoom. We're going to be actually doing this on a different platform, probably starting next month. So stay tuned for announcements on that. It'll be a little different. We think it'll look a little fancier. And I'm all about fancy. So let's get started on this one. Chuck, how many facilities do you say that you have?
About 62.
And you've had to connect all of those to each other. Is that correct?
We in various points and times we have had ring networks where we have tried to do hub and spokes and connect them all together. At this point in time, we're trying a much more of a cloud approach where we've been moving into the Microsoft Dynamics and O365 world. So a lot of our stuff is out there in the public cloud type of scenario. So then it becomes just much more a function of getting an ISP connection to that location. Right. But at the same time, we still have some legacy stuff. That means they got to come back to one of our data centers. We have a couple of data centers, one in Ames and then one in Bondurant. And that's usually accomplished fairly quickly with just a VPN tunnel. So, but at various points in time, yeah, we've connected them all together in one big ring.
I know Todd and I first started talking to you a little bit here, 4 years ago, in relation to your facilities in Adair and the fact that they were really struggling with connectivity and that you were having to get creative with some wireless links. Talk a little bit about that. What kind of wireless technology were you using and maybe you still are using to make sure that your business is connected?
Well, in our Adair location, that was one of our legacy West Central locations. And what we had for West Central, and I was the network administrator for them, was a wireless point-to-point setup. So we would take a wireless radio, and the nice thing about being a grain cooperative, we were usually the tallest buildings in the towns that we were in.
Yep.
And we would just shoot from point A to point B and route accordingly. The biggest issue with that is, tree lines and ridges, et cetera. Adair happens to sit in a valley a little bit. So we ended up having to we have a 225-foot tall radio tower that is sitting, we call it our Nelson Tower. It's outside of Hamlin. It's basically the tallest thing in Grundy County. So we can shoot from the top of the Adair elevator to the top of that tower, and then would have to run it all the way back to our corporate headquarters in Ralston, Iowa. Gotcha. So we've done Motorola canopies, which is just a unlicensed band. We've tried some licensed bands. We still have a licensed band that is running at this point in time. But Adair, we got a little bit lucky here recently that Casey Mutual Telephone was running in some fiber. And they had run it to the extent that they didn't get it down to Main Street yet, where our headquarters was or office was, but they were clipping the side of one of our flat storage units. So we could then have them give us a spur off of that. And then we had to take the control of it and shoot it down to the office that was still way down in the valley. So
Okay.
it's helped them tremendously, but it's still one of those where we've had to do a little bit of creativity trying to get it from the primary location that you can get fiber down to an office. So we still have power issues and frequency issues in that area that we're striving to perfect at this point.
It sounds like that problem in Adair might be resolved, as Casey Mutual's just recently announced that they are going to build fiber to the home in the whole community. That was originally going to be a community project, public-private partnership, but the community, the city, was having some difficulties getting everything lined up. So Casey Mutual just said, we're just going to do it. And now they are in the process of building out that fiber to the home there.
Yeah, and that will be great, especially if they can get me fiber down to the main office instead of just right up at the edge.
Absolutely. I think that's totally the plan there.
So how did you connect the tower back to Ralston? And was that still wireless?
Set of radio shots.
Okay, so it was 2 radio shots. Do you have a lot of those?
It was 6 radio shots in total.
Oh my.
So you went from the office to the elevator over to the Nelson Tower. The Nelson Tower could see the top of the Ralston elevator, the top of the Ralston elevator down to the office, and then we fibered it into the.
Oh, jeez.
So there was many moving link to getting them connected.
Where there's a will, there's a way, right, Chuck?
That's right.
Well, I know, Ryan, you've had to be pretty creative too in serving new areas with your fixed wireless service. So you're probably familiar with some of the pains that Chuck had to go through to get his businesses, his locations all connected. Talk a little bit about, from the provider aspect, what kind of challenges do you face when you're going to deploy some new service in an area, and what you have to do to get bandwidth to that new area?
Absolutely. We've seen a lot of these challenges too. We've rolled into some places, and we find that elevator that's 120, 140 feet tall, and you go, okay, excellent. And we get up to the top of it and we can't see any of our existing sites. And then we get into the same situation of, okay, well, what else do we have that we can get to the site with? And we end up doing the same thing of, oh, well, there's a ground leg over here. Oh, there's a tower over here. Let's lease service off of that. One of the painful parts with how we do it is we build our network completely redundantly. So on any tower that's got any size to it, we find 2 paths into that tower at a minimum. And a lot of times we will feed something downstream and there's another path there, but usually the capacity on that is so small that it can't handle the tower anymore. But that's some of the pain. So you get to the towers that are pretty remote, and it's hard to get a second link to them. And sometimes you just have to go, well, we're going to run 2 links off of this tower and hope we don't lose the tower that's feeding it. Yeah, we've had, you get into some of these rural areas, and for the most part, we're flat up here, and it's pretty easy to reach anything if you're on anything tall. But we do start to get into some hills, and I wouldn't necessarily call them valleys, but there's some spots where people are pretty down in a hole.
Down in the holler. Yeah.
So a lot of times what we do is we try to find something on a ridge, on an edge, that we can get down to them. We had one guy that was in a rock quarry. He bought this rock quarry and built a house at the bottom of it. He happens to own the property across the street. So we put up a 90-foot tower. We needed 90 feet of tower just to get service to the area.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, we shoot down into the quarry just for him. But the other challenge for us is trees. If you can't get any height, getting above the trees is very difficult. We had some type of agricultural factory south of Hampton that you could stand in their parking lot and you could see our tower clear as day. But once you stepped back to the building where it was, the trees across the street were just flat out in the way. We couldn't get above them. They were established, they were tall, but their driveway curved in as it came to the property. So we could actually walk out to the end of the driveway, and you could see your tower right there. Unfortunately, that was about 1,000 feet from the building. So we took a very hybrid approach of, we buried two conduits out to a post by their driveway. We had to make sure the post was tall enough so when semis drove by, we didn't block our signal. And we ran a media converter and fiber back to the building, and it was a lot of work, but there's nothing else in the area. Their options were satellite or nothing. So that's, those are the kind of challenges we see all the time is, we can have all the vertical assets that are out there, and you're still going to run into places where you get to them and you go, I can't see anything. So that's some of the challenges we've run into. We've probably got 100 dishes that are mounted to trees. Because here in northern Iowa, we like our northern tree lines because we don't like to get buried in snow. So we'll trench Cat 5 out to a tree, and as long as we got a nice, viable, clean tree, we'll mount to it. And usually they don't grow fast enough that by the time we need to re-aim them, we need to replace the equipment anyway.
Good point.
So it's a neat little trick, but.
So we're really talking about challenges here and getting rural broadband or broadband to rural areas. We've hit on a couple of those challenges already, right? Both Chuck and Ryan have talked about terrain and trees. A lot of the technologies that are being used on the fixed wireless side are line of sight. Ryan, I know that you've experimented with or tried out or actively using some technologies that are non-line of sight. What does that really do for you? I assume it has drawbacks as well as advantages.
Absolutely. So when you're talking line of sight, we have a lot of capacity and we have a lot of capabilities. Our range is pretty good. On a tower where I've got line of sight, I'm not afraid to do a 6-mile shot. We've got some out as far as 10 miles with no problems. When you start getting into non-line of sight, now we have a lot more challenges. You got to use lower frequencies to get through the obstruction, whatever it is. If it's too much obstruction, you're going to have to go an even lower frequency. The lower frequencies don't tend to have the capacity that the higher frequencies do. 3 gigahertz is the popular one at the moment. The FCC opened up a bunch more spectrum for us, 3 times as much as we had before. But then they auctioned off about half of that. So we lost some of that. But when that really grabbed some traction, the LTE vendors started making equipment for us.
Okay.
And the LTE equipment does really well at providing service with a poor receive signal. So you don't have to get a lot of signal to the customer to get a decent connection. About 1/6 or maybe a little bit more of our network is LTE currently.
Okay.
It has its own headaches. The equipment's more expensive. It's about 4 times as expensive as traditional unlicensed equipment is. On top of that, the new FCC rules for CBRS means you have to register every single unit that you put out there in a frequency coordinator. And that's time consuming. Going back and finding 200 some radios was time consuming. And you have to have GPS accuracy within 10 meters, and you have to register the height within 3 meters, and it gives you a lot of room to play, but you kind of have to know where the radio is for sure. Right. So, but there's not as much spectrum there to work with. So when we're talking unlicensed spectrum, 100 meg package is not difficult. I mean, it takes some work, it takes some engineering, but it's not difficult and it's not expensive to deliver. 100 meg on LTE is doable. It's expensive, but your capacity on that tower is not going to be real great. You might be able to serve A couple dozen customers at that speed, and certainly not hundreds. But with the LTE technology, your upstream is poor. So the best we've seen out of our LTE setup, and ours is heavily skewed for download because that's what most of it is. We've been able to deliver about a 60-70 meg package download, but our uploads, if we can hit 5 meg, it's usually we're lucky. But the places we use this are where customers can't get anything, so we're already struggling to get to them. So we kind of reserve it for that.
Right.
The new toys that we're playing with, Cambium has a proprietary chipset that's not LTE based, which means you're buying just their equipment and there's no interoperability. We've had a lot better luck with that. We've seen upload speeds of 20 meg and higher. Okay. And you can tune that a little bit better. So if you really want to deliver a synchronous 50 meg package, it's doable. But again, that equipment's way more expensive than the unlicensed band. So
is that still line of sight?
No, you can do non-line of sight. The acronym kind of gets thrown around a lot. That's NLOS, and now we're talking non-line of sight or near line of sight, because those two are very different beasts.
Yeah.
So most of their approach is, oh, well, this is near line of sight. So when you go to them and you say, well, I'm trying to go through this monstrous forest of trees, and they go, well, that's not going to work. That's not line of sight. You go, oh, okay. The test unit I did at my farm was 6.8 miles from the tower. Half of the path was obstructed by dirt, and I couldn't see the tower through one of my neighbor's trees. And I was still able to manage like a 40-50 meg download with a 20 meg upload, and pretty decent latency on it, which is a very usable package for someone trying to get work done.
Right.
One of the challenges coming up is there's some funding that's trying to push the upload speed much higher. And a lot of our fixed wireless equipment is not well set up to do that.
Yeah.
So
we're going to talk about funding here in a little bit because, well, the big news this week was the governor signing the Iowa broadband bill that has some new funding available there. So we'll bring that up. Chuck, the equipment that you're using, that fixed wireless stuff that you're using, the point-to-point stuff, I know Ryan talked about some different frequency bands that are being used there. Are you familiar with all that? I mean, are there certain things you have to do or bands you use and others you don't?
Well, we did some of the unlicensed bands, 5.2, 5.4, obviously a 2.4 band. And really we ran into some issues with just the amount of traffic out there on it. Mm-hmm. So we went into a licensed band just so that we could, when we had a ring, we went through, got the FCC permits, got all the licensing established, bought radios, had them tuned to that frequency, and you don't have any trouble with those. But again, it's $200,000 for a ring to pick up 10.
And there you go, right there. There's the proof. There's the proof. Chuck just froze up on us. So it's certainly something that I would assume that a more superior option or choice would be that at each of the Landus sites, they had some sort of really high quality, highly reliable broadband connection. And then they could use, VPNs and whatnot to keep all of those sites connected. We'll wait for Chuck to unfreeze there. Maybe he's just playing freeze tag. We're not sure. But Ryan, the question that might come to mind for those that are on the webinar that aren't necessarily providers like you is, you got all these problems, Ryan. Why don't you just build fiber everywhere?
Well, that gets expensive fast. So we are actually in the initial stages of doing some fiber deploy. And a lot of it is focused at just getting our towers connected. The rate we're growing at, it's hard to get bandwidth to our towers anymore, at least over the air. So when you're talking about building fiber networks, you kind of have two different paths. You can hire a contractor, and that gets expensive on a per foot basis if you're talking rural, especially if you start running into, well, this group of homes is along a river and the ground is just rock the whole way. It's an extremely expensive process. I mean, I've seen quotes as high as $90 a foot, and that's just for your boring.
Yeah.
So that gets expensive quick. But even otherwise, just contractor rates going a mile is easily $40,000-$50,000, depending on how they put it in. Or you can start buying boring rigs, boring rigs and plows and trenchers, and we're kind of doing a little bit of both. So I've seen the finances of both sides of this, and that gets expensive too. You have to tool up, you have to have all this equipment, you have to fix it when it breaks, and you have to have people that are qualified to run it. And it's kind of a specialized skill. You can't just grab random people off the street and be like, here you go, you got a job, let's run this. High pressure gas lines, high voltage underground lines.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dangers in there. So but yeah, that's a lot of the challenges we've seen with that is first we're gonna worry about our towers and get those connected better. But yeah, the rural fiber builds are expensive, and they're extremely hard to ROI on.
And I would guess the contractor's point of view is, there's an opportunity cost of them doing a rural job because everybody's busy right now. And then it's not like the capacity is all in the urban. And so if you want to get to rural, you're going to pay urban prices per day on their profitability. I mean, that's just the bottom line, is they're not willing to work cheaper just because it's an easier job.
Yeah, no one's willing to work cheaper on anything right now.
Well, they don't have to at this point, right? Because the demand is exceeding the supply of quality labor. Even engineering is getting a little harder to come by just because so many people are building networks. Chuck, we welcome you back. And looks like I'm still getting his mic on there, but that's fine. So obviously I asked that question facetiously, Ryan. You know that I know why. You can't just snap your fingers and make it happen. It's expensive and there's a lot that goes into it. But let's talk a little bit about some of the funding that could be and should be coming down the pike here, we all hope, once the rules are released. So I know that you've worked in the past and worked to secure some of the grant funding that was available. What are some of the challenges you faced there in saying, okay, I've got a solution, I can reach this rural area, I can get them better broadband than they have now, but I need some money, I need some help to make that happen? What are the challenges that you found in applying for some of those funds?
So there's been a whole slew of funding, some of it federal, some of it state. The paperwork on it is tedious. The grant that we applied for and won was probably one of the easiest out there to do, but the process was still a lot of work. And we have a lot of reporting that we're gonna have to do on what we spent where and how we tracked that and where all of our equipment went. The federal grants that we've looked at there's a lot of money that came out of the federal area there, but the application process was almost to the point you'd have to hire someone else to do the application. And then on top of that, you've got 5 years of reporting, 10 years of reporting. CAF had performance reporting on it. I don't recall what the RDOF requirements were. The state requirements were pretty lean. Just that they could come test at any time they wanted within 5 years at any of the locations that are covered. And that's an easy reporting mechanism to deal with. But yeah, overall, it's a lot of work to put into that for money. A lot of the programs are focused on fiber, so the wireless program, the wireless equipment doesn't get covered very well. We were lucky enough that the state of Iowa recognized that, hey, wireless can do the speeds required for this. So they recognized our capability of doing this and funded us on our projects. So
one of the challenges I know you faced, I've talked to providers out there that have also seen this, is that there are areas in the mapping that are identified as not being eligible for funding because someone has said, I can do X there, I can do this level of speed. But it's really unsure that they actually are able to do that speed. Have you had to tackle that before? You said, oh, this is a great area, I could totally serve this area, I need a little financial help to do it, and then you can't because somebody else has already planted their flag and said, we can do magic, and you can't prove that they can't.
Yeah, we found places where Mediacom claimed that they had service. One of them's a little spot near Hampton that has about 20-25 homes, and
right.
We cover the area, and you can go out there and there's no pedestals, there's nothing on the poles, they're very clearly not there. But are you going to challenge their reporting and go through all that work just to get the reporting corrected? By the time you do that, you could have just built it yourself. Plus there's the concern of, well, if you do call them out on that, are they just going to go, oh, well, we'll build this real quick, and then you've got another competitor in the area?
Yeah.
So,
boy, that is kind of a tough choice to make. I know there was I think maybe I talked to you about this, Ryan, when the first federal program started coming out. There was some part of north central Iowa that supposedly said I had 50 meg by 50 meg service or something like that, and it was another wireless provider, not controlled by Ryan, that was reporting it. And I finally managed to talk to somebody. I was like, how are you doing this? Well, if somebody really wanted 50 by 50, we can do it. We'd have to put in some sort of point-to-point system, and it would probably be a couple $1,000s install fee, and they'd probably pay quite a bit a month to do it. But we could do it, so we report it to the FCC. And to me, that shouldn't be allowed.
I believe the requirement there, and this is where wireless providers have a little bit of gray area to work, is there's a specific time period you have to be able to deploy in. And I think it's about 2 weeks. So if you can reasonably deploy that service within 2 weeks, well, if it's just a tower climb, well, yeah, I can do that.
But if you can only deploy it at a cost that no one can afford, then if the tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, did it make a sound? It's just vapor.
Yep. And some of these areas we've seen some really high speeds reported, and being a wireless provider, we kind of pay attention to what's in the air everywhere.
Sure.
And some of these, the tower doesn't have the capacity to begin with. So it's very clear that they could not deploy this in 2 weeks. But who's going to challenge that, and is anyone going to do anything about it?
That was one of my questions about was how the backhaul capacity, how is that keeping pace, and how is it going to with the state funding if there's already shortages out there to these towers? I don't know about Landus. How much capacity do you what's your minimum service need, Chuck?
We normally, for a small location that has like 1 or 2 people in it, we want 10 by 10, 10 up, 10 down. Larger locations, 50 by 50, 100 by 100, 500 by 500 in some of our really big locations. So everybody's got to stream video,
Yeah.
I was going to ask about what type of
data's got to go up, data's got to go down. So it a lot depends, but 50 by 50 is kind of a almost a bottom threshold at this point in time for a lot of businesses.
Mm-hmm. And
So
it's
how do you
that,
think that state funding, like I said, requirement, if we add more to the rural areas and rely on the wireless, are there providers that are gonna build out these rural areas at the tower level or not?
And that's kind of why I'm moving towards connecting our towers with fiber as much as we can.
Mhm.
We're starting to hit wireless technology has grown insanely over the last 10, 20 years. The old Motorola Canopy FSK radios were amazing radios at the time, but I think they topped out at like 4 meg, right?
7.
7. Okay. It's been a while since I used one. But when we're talking backhauls between towers and connecting them, our capacities have increased a lot, but you start to hit a distance limitation when you do this.
yeah.
So some of the first 11 gigahertz licensed radios that came out that were available at a price that most WISPs can afford and small businesses could afford, the capacity on them was 770 meg. That's that's all you get.
Mhm.
Some of the radios we have now, they'll do QAM 4K, as long as you got a good signal to noise ratio and you're engineered this link properly. You can do 1.5 gig full duplex all day long. If you've got enough spectrum in the area, you can bond 2 of those together, and that starts getting a little bit expensive, and you lose some to that overhead. So now you're down to 2.7 gig full duplex. 18 gigahertz is opened up. Equipment for that is getting cheaper. You can do the same thing on that, where you can get 1.5 gig per link. You can bond 2 links. You can bond 2 11 gig and 2 18 gig links, and you're close to 6 gig. Depending on how far you're going to go, this works or it doesn't. We've got 11 gig links out at 15 miles, and we're talking 4-foot dishes. And 4-foot might not sound like much, but a 4-foot dish is big.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get up on the tower. It's hard to aim. They're no fun to work with.
It's not derecho proof, probably.
The 2 we have up might be, but I wouldn't have any confidence of. I wouldn't hang on to that dish if a derecho came through.
In a derecho, yeah.
But most of our towers are 6 to 10 miles apart, and that's kind of a decent distance for 11 gig. But we're starting to hit the limitation of you just can't push much more over the air to get past QAM 4K. You don't gain that much bandwidth, but you need a ton of signal noise ratio to do it, which we're talking bigger dishes. So when you're talking, well, now I got to get 4-foot dishes to go 6 miles instead of just using a 3-footer. Well, that's doesn't sound like much, but it's an undertaking to swap that out. In town, where we've got some shorter shots, our 1 to 2 mile shots, we're using 80 gigahertz gear, which is very touchy to rain and it's very touchy to movement. So whatever you mount it on can't move. We'll do 10 gigabit full duplex on those.
Interesting.
And again, you can take 2 of those and bond them together, and you got 20 gigabits per second of capacity. But you're limited to 1 to 2 miles. At 2 miles, you better have that thing engineered and aimed perfectly. Otherwise, downpour is going to cause some problems for you.
Do you and this is not the matter of where you can just grab the power knob and turn it to 11 and get a little more power output, right?
Well, the equipment that we're using actually adjusts for fade.
Oh, does it? Okay.
So it'll run the transmitters lower during dry events, so you're not consuming as much power. But in the event that it fades, it will start ramping up power. But as you increase the transmit power, there's certain thresholds where you start to lose modulation to transmit power. So it's kind of a trade-off of your fade from rain versus your demodulation from transmit power. So it's all engineered. There's people that are way smarter than me that calculate all this stuff out and figure it out. But they do hold on in rain very well. So that's the great part about those.
One of the questions I had was the transfer, or kind of like both of you have a different role of taking information and relaying it. You know, you're aggregating it right from a customer like Chuck, but Chuck, are you seeing any, like having conversations about the co-op trying to connect to the farm? Or is that not in the cards yet?
That is starting to become a very large portion of farming, actually. You know, the number of data points that we want to be able to get information from on a farm is getting down to where they almost want to go 1 inch by 1 inch. What's the soil type? How much rain did it receive? What's the wind condition? How much sun did it get? You know, as they try to increase yields on an ever shrinking amount of acres, they would need all that data to put it, to be able to give that individual plant exactly what nutrients it needs to produce the most. So that becomes a large item. There's carbon programs out there. They want all that information to get up to, you know, an exchange of some type, to where they're paying for the carbon offset. You know, that data is becoming everything in farming at this point in time. It's not, you know, our CEO is a big fan of saying that pretty soon the data is going to be worth more than the crop is. Well, I can't eat the data, so it's never going to get quite that far to me. But at the same time, you know, the ability to have the information when you need it, where you need it, and how you need it, that's going to drive agriculture in the next 3 to 5 years.
And do you think the farmers and the co-op systems are going to just keep relying on the co-ops to be more of that as you're the consumer of the data and you need it, that then they say, well, why don't you help me collect it? And what wireless technologies are we going to use to do that is what I'm curious about.
Well, and that's where it all, you know, there's 15 or 20 different people all trying to vie for how that goes.
Okay.
You know, we each have a different model out there on how you want to create the data. Where's the value for the data? Things like a Truterra is out there, and some other carbon programs. Land O'Lakes has one. We're a Land O'Lakes cooperative, so we're heavily invested with what they're going with, and our CEO happened to have come from that area of Land O'Lakes. So, you know, there's all types of ideas on how to get it, you know, whether it is directly attached to the machines that are out there. We use a lot of a product called the Slingshot, where our equipment is rolling and it's collecting all that information live on the ground as it's applying chemicals and everything else. Then it has to just get it back up to us.
Right.
How does that work? Using a cell signal, or?
It uses a cell signal right now, which, you know, I think everybody in the state of Iowa understands you hit a dead spot on some cell signals some days. So
absolutely,
it works, but it doesn't give anybody live data back.
Okay.
I mean, you know, you gotta chunk through that whole information, you know. So it's a technology that's going to have to evolve quickly, to me.
And we've
There's
seen
going
this
to be a lot of places that are going to want, you know, a farm might need 10 meg up and down, just for the farming operation.
Yep.
Not for them to stream Netflix, just for the farming operation. They might need 10 megs out in the field.
And we've actually seen this. We've actually seen this at grain sites. we're seeing more and more grain dryers that are internet connected.
Absolutely.
They can monitor the dryness. They can make sure it's running.
Yeah.
We've seen hog confinements where they're monitoring all of the environmental data that way.
Mhm.
A lot of these hog confinements have solar sites now too, and they want to monitor all that solar information. So we've installed service at a lot of non-residential places that are just, this is a remote site. We want to monitor it full time.
Yeah.
And
some of the things are wanting to have cameras in for in birthing barns. If you're if you're a hog farmer or have cattle, you want to see it when that's going on so you can get there before it happens. Well, you know, and it's not right down the driveway like it used to be. It's 5 miles away, 10 miles away, and you need to see it live.
It's far enough away you don't smell it, but you can get there when you need to. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I've got some good news, guys. So I hope you're all sitting down, and I know you are. The good news is I was just watching TV last night, and there's this thing called 5G that is going to solve everybody's problems. It's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we won't need any of this anymore because 5G is going to just do it all, right?
I don't believe that for a second.
Okay. I hope everybody can see the dripping sarcasm coming out of my mouth because, but it's so true that it has become such a talking point in the general public who doesn't understand, nor should they have to understand technology, right? That, oh, well, 5G is going to do this. Oh, 5G is going to do that. And they really don't, the wireless industry, not your side of it, Ryan, but the other side of the wireless industry has done such a job of hyping something that is capable of great things in certain narrow applications, but is not going to give a farmer a gigabit at the tractor. It is not going to give somebody that lives 5 miles outside of town great internet, because by the time that service gets out there, by the time 5G is available to most farms, something else will have come along. It'll be 6G. They're already talking about that.
well, Curtis, we've got about 10 minutes left, and the audience may have some questions.
Yes, absolutely. If you do have a question, you can type it in the chat window. You can use the Q&A button. Raise your hand, and I'll be watching for that, and we can let you talk. So yeah, thank you for reminding me to do that. We get off on a rant here and just kind of forget about our guests, but we hope you're being entertained as well as informed here. Chuck, what is the next, you guys are probably always looking into the future about how to upgrade your telecommunications, your network, et cetera. What's the next thing that you're looking at that will help you guys improve your operations vis-a-vis broadband?
Well, there's always new locations that are getting fiber run to them, and that's obviously a huge thing for us. Last year it was Ackley magically had fiber running into the area. Adair finally got some fiber into it. Stewart, etc. We still have some dead spots like in Earlham where we can't get anything in. We partner with some wireless providers to get us some areas. A lot depends on what the telco in that area is willing to start working on for us. The need for the broadband's going to be there. It's at what price can you get it to us at?
Right.
So we're always looking for refinements on how to do that, and eventually, it's almost decoupling the wireless radios that are out there if possible, because you start having the issues with the power and various other things that you just can't control. Nothing was Duratio proof. Well, we were running a bunch of dishes, and shockingly, we had to go adjust a bunch of dishes to get people back up. So how rock solid can you make it? Everybody wants to be 99.9999% up. Well, there's only a certain reality to that when you're dealing with a wireless network. You can get fairly close, but you can't control things like power. And the power grid in some small towns is questionable.
It is hard to control variables that are outside of your control, that's for sure.
Yes.
So Ryan, from your perspective, what's on the horizon on the technology side that'll allow you to do more rural broadband differently, better, et cetera? I mean, are there new wireless technologies you're exploring above and beyond what you've done already? Are there any trends in fiber deployment or development that will allow you to do more fiber because it's more affordable or it's, done differently? Talk a little bit about what's on your horizon.
The price of building fiber has come down, contractors notwithstanding.
Right.
If
you can get the fiber, that is.
If you can get the fiber, which is the current challenge. Fiber conduits Volter out 6 months at the moment, depending on where you look. There's a lot of exciting wireless technology coming out, but a lot of it is focused on really dense areas. The 60 gig wireless mesh from Facebook Telegraph it looks super promising if you're in a huge urban area with no trees, which there are places where this is very useful. I believe there's a very large test deployment down in Puerto Rico where they're like, hey, here's gigabit over the air. It's cool.
First, they had to have a convenient hurricane to take the trees down.
Yeah, sorry about all your trees. Here's some fast internet. But as far as us, we're seeing our access radios from the tower to the customer improve in speed. They're able to handle more customers per access point, which is helpful. A lot of our rural towers, we don't see more than about 50 subscribers on them, because by the time you get away from that tower any further, you're too far away from the tower and the houses aren't that dense. However, 50 subscribers can still use a lot of bandwidth overall. And that's where we're working on trying to get fiber deeper into our network. So we're not having to haul that over licensed microwave links, basically. And then there's some other fun things that you can do with, hey, here's this town and I don't have a fiber path anywhere near it, but this tower 6 miles over, I have fiber to that. So maybe I'm going to go build fiber in the town to connect all the subscribers back to a tower. And then I'm going to use a microwave link to actually get service to that town. And then as I've ROI'd my fiber to the home build, I can go back and build that fiber backhaul and replace that wireless link eventually. But it gives you a faster deployment because, hey, I didn't have to build it's 6 miles wireless, but it's probably 8 miles. If you have to build through the fields and whatnot.
Yeah, you're not going to go diagonal across somebody's section, that's for sure.
Well, you can probably get an easement, but it's a bad idea. The first time a plow drags about a mile of that out, you're going to be sad.
Yeah, very sad.
But that gives us an opportunity to deploy somewhere and have very fast service, but not have that initial the CapEx and the time delay of getting the backhaul to that area. So it's kind of the wireless, the WISP in reverse, but it works. So
great. Chuck, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap things up here? Because we're getting close to our hour.
No, I want to apologize for dropping out earlier. I'd love to say it was my ISP that did it, but I'm have to blame Microsoft on this one. My brand new Surface 4 decided to blue screen on me.
Oh boy, the other evil empire, right? Yeah,
that's right. I can't say as I can blame the ISP.
Well, we said only nice things about you while you were gone, so
I know at least somebody better than that.
Well, I just want to take a second to plug our next Lunch and Learn, which is scheduled for Wednesday, May 12th at noon. We're really excited to hear about the Reedsburg, Wisconsin story. Some of you may have met the Reedsburg, Wisconsin folks at an IAMU event a few years ago. Reedsburg is a fiber to the home municipal in Wisconsin, and they are the only municipal telecom utility in Wisconsin, because when they built in 2005, it was before the big guys realized, oh, we got to shut these guys down. So in Wisconsin, they changed the laws so that you can't offer retail service as a municipality, but Reedsburg was, of course, grandfathered in. So they not only have built fiber to the home in their own town of about 9,000, but they have actually built that fiber out to much of their county and are continuing to get requests to provide additional service. We're going to be talking with Brett Shipner, who is on the Reedsburg Utility Commission. He's the general manager for the commission, which operates the fiber network under Lightspeed name. And Brett's actually on the Wisconsin Broadband Task Force, and they are working to try to get those laws pulled so that the next Reedsburg will have the opportunity to provide better broadband. So we're really excited to have Brett on with us on Wednesday, the 12th. We'll be getting that email out to everybody with the link to get on board that. And as we wrap up today, again, I want to extend a thank you. Oh, Todd wants to say something.
I want to plug in about experimenting with Clubhouse for CBAN.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We want to let our listeners know that we're trying to expand the reach of community broadband, and as we've added more of a nationwide audience, we are going on the Clubhouse platform to do, we're calling them broadband brunch events.
Broadband brunch is what Todd and I have been doing. If you don't know what Clubhouse is, just do a quick research. It is the hottest new social media. It's audio only. So it's like, to me, it's like, I described it to somebody today. It's like, oh, it's disappeared. It's like carrying around a radio station or a podcast in your pocket. You basically can and participate. Exactly. Yeah. So I was on one this morning about energy issues, and because I wanted to talk about how broadband is reliant on, our energy is reliant on broadband to be smart. So it's a really good platform. So if you haven't heard of the Clubhouse app, do a little research. If you would like, it's by invitation only right now. And Todd and I both have invitations.
Yes.
So if you want an invitation, we're trying to build a broadband community because, quite frankly, there's not a lot of people talking about broadband on there. So we want to get in at the opening here and have a good community broadband discussion.
There is a 5G. So we have
5G one,
fiber-based, community-based broadband, because we know that otherwise everybody will just assume it's all 5G.
Absolutely. That is the goal. So if any of you would like that application, want an invitation, I should say, to Clubhouse, drop me an email. It's cdean@broadbandaction.com. Or you can use one of my other 47 emails that probably are cluttering up your contact list. So again, thank you to our guests today, Ryan Malek with Router12 Networks, and Ryan is a CBAN provider member. Wanted to make sure we recognize you there. And also Chuck Pauk, who is with Landus Cooperative. Chuck, thank you for your insight and everything. Oh, wait, we got one question here. From a fiber design firm, I appreciate your time today and plan on joining your group. Hey, that worked great. We'll have a new CBAN member after we're done here today. So thank you for.
We are approaching 100 members.
What's that?
And we are quickly approaching 100 members.
Quickly approaching 100. Absolutely. In fact, I'm pretty sure by this time next week, we'll be over 100 because Todd and I had a great conversation with some folks in Indiana yesterday. CBAN is going to, fingers crossed, be doing some sort of meet and greet at the Fiber Broadband Association conference in Nashville, that the Fiber Connect 2021. And we're also going out to the Rocky Mountain Connect conference in Colorado in August. And again, networking with more people that want to be part of CBAN. So spread the word, spread the love. Everybody, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time here on our CBAN Lunch and Learn. Thanks.